Nobody warned me about this. Understanding perimenopause, menopause, and why it matters on the bike. Welcome back to Hot Flashes and Horsepower, the podcast for midlife women who know that life doesn't end at 40. It just gets a little louder, a little wiser, and a whole lot more interesting. I'm Shell, road name Pass Out, and whether you're listening from your car, your garage, your office, or maybe while you're out cleaning bugs off your windshield after a weekend ride, I am so glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about something that every woman will experience if she lives long enough, yet somehow almost no one prepares us for: perimenopause. Menopause, the years that completely change our bodies, our minds, our emotions, and yes, even the way we experience riding a motorcycle. And if you've ever found yourself standing in the kitchen wondering why the hell you walked in there, or forgetting the name of someone you've worked for years, or crying because you forgot to put gas in the bike, or pulling over to the side of the road because your riding jacket suddenly feels like your own personal sauna, you are in good company. Today, we're talking about all of it, not with shame, not with embarrassment, but honestly, because if we're going to keep living full throttle, we need to understand what's happening inside our bodies just as much as we understand what's happening underneath our motorcycles. I grew up hearing about menopause in whispers. My mom and her friends talked about hot flashes, might have overheard something about mood swings, but that was about it. Nobody talked about anxiety. Nobody talked about brain fog. Nobody talked about aching joints or poor sleep, losing confidence, or wondering why that person staring back at you in the mirror suddenly feels like somebody you do not even recognize. It's almost like one day someone hands you a motorcycle you've never ridden before, gives you no owner's manual, and says, good luck. It's somehow we're expected to figure it out, all while we're juggling careers and relationships and aging parents, adult children. We might still be raising minor children, got marriages, divorces, and for many of us, motorcycles. Let's start with the basics. What is perimenopause? Perimenopause literally means around menopause. It's the transition leading up to menopause when estrogen and progesterone begin fluctuating, sometimes wildly. Most women begin experiencing perimenopause symptoms in their 40s, although it can start in the late 30s or even earlier for some women. The transition often lasts 4 to 8 years, although it varies widely from person to person. Research from the Menopause Society and the National Institutes of Health shows that this hormonal transition affects nearly every single system in the body, not just our reproductive system. Menopause itself is actually just one day. It's officially diagnosed after you've gone 12 consecutive months without a menstrual period. After that, you're postmenopausal. The irony, many women say the years leading up to menopause were actually harder than menopause itself. You are not imagining it. One of the things that frustrated me the most was wondering if I was just losing my freaking mind. Was I becoming forgetful, lazy, over emotional, too sensitive? The answer is probably not. Research tells us that up to 80% of women experience hot flashes or night sweats. 40 to 60% report sleep disturbances, and many experience symptoms like anxiety, difficulty concentrating, memory lapses, mood changes, joint pain, fatigue, and decreased energy during the menopause transition. These changes are linked to shifting hormone levels and can have a significant impact on daily life. Read that again. You're not failing. Your body is changing. There's a huge difference. Most of us think estrogen is primarily about reproduction. It's not. Estrogen has receptors throughout the brain, heart, bones, muscles, skin, joints, and blood vessels. When estrogen begins fluctuating, it's like someone starts randomly adjusting the dimmer switch to the lights in your house. Some days everything feels bright. Other days, nothing is working quite right. Your sleep changes, your temperature regulation goes haywire, your memory changes, your recovery after exercise changes, even your stress response changes. No wonder so many of us feel like we've become strangers to ourselves in the midst of this. Now, here's what surprised me. The symptoms people don't talk about are often the hardest. Brain fog. walking into a room and forgetting why, searching for words in the middle of a conversation, feeling mentally exhausted after making decisions all day. Many women describe it as like trying to think through molasses. Researchers believe fluctuating estrogen affects parts of the brain involved in memory, attention, and processing speed. The good news is that for many women, these changes improve over time. But during the transition, they could be incredibly frustrating. If you've ever forgotten where you parked your bike at an event, welcome to the club. Now let's talk about something unique to this community. How does all of this affect riding? First, let me say this. Menopause doesn't mean you shouldn't ride. It doesn't mean you're becoming unsafe. It doesn't mean you're getting too old. It simply means your body has some different needs than it might have 10 years ago. Maybe you've noticed that your heavy touring bike suddenly feels a lot heavier. Holding it up at a stoplight takes some more effort. Long rides leave you sore for days instead of hours. Your hands begin cramping sooner. You don't bounce back after a weekend ride the way you used to. Those changes aren't necessarily because you've lost your love of riding. They're often because you're dealing with reduced muscle mass, joint changes, disrupted sleep, and hormone shifts that affect recovery. Understanding that difference matters because once we understand what's going on, we can adapt. And adapting is not weakness, it's wisdom. Now, heat hits different at this point in life as well, too. Can we talk about hot flashes for a minute? There is nothing quite like sitting at a red light in July in Phoenix, wearing black riding gear on a black bike, on top of that engine that's producing hundreds of degrees of heat. And suddenly, it feels like somebody lit a campfire inside your chest. If you've experienced that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Your heart is racing, your face gets flushed, sweat is rolling down your back, your helmet feels like an oven. Temperature regulation changes are one of the hallmark symptoms of menopause because declining estrogen affects the body's internal thermostat. That doesn't mean we stop riding. It means we ride smarter. We hydrate. We choose breathable gear. We take more breaks. We ride earlier in the day when possible. We give ourselves permission to adjust because riding is supposed to be fun, not an endurance contest. I, for one, am not trying to prove a damn thing to anyone at my big age. I'll challenge myself, absolutely, but I'm not trying to put myself or my riding companions in danger by taking unnecessary risks with my health or well-being. I know my body, I know my limits, and I honor them both. One of the biggest lies menopause tells us is that we've somehow become less capable. I don't believe that. I think we're becoming different riders, more intentional, more experienced, more aware of our limits. And honestly, that makes me a better rider. I don't ride to prove anything. I ride because it fills my soul. I ride because it's where my mind finally gets quiet. I ride because somewhere between the curves and the desert air, I remember who the hell I am. That hasn't changed. If anything, menopause has made that feeling even more meaningful. The mental and emotional roller coaster no one prepared us for. Now, in the first part of this episode, talked about what perimenopause and menopause actually are and how hormonal changes can affect us physically. But now I want to shift gears a little bit and dig into the part that caught me totally off guard. Not the hot flashes, not the weight gain, not the sore joints, the emotional and mental changes. Because if you're anything like me, this is a part that makes you question yourself. Why am I crying over a damn commercial? Why can't I remember what I'm about to say? Why do I suddenly feel anxious for no reason? Why don't I feel like Shell anymore? Here's what I want you to hear before we go any further. You are not losing your mind. You are not weak, and you are definitely not. I've always considered myself reasonably organized. I'm not OCD, but I did spend years as a teacher. I've managed enterprise customer accounts. I've coordinated trainings, done presentations, hosted meetings. I could juggle a dozen things without missing a beat. And then one day, I couldn't remember the name of somebody I'd worked with for years. I'd walk into a room and completely forget why I was there. I would lose my train of thought halfway through a sentence. And honestly, it scared me. I remember thinking, oh my God, is this early dementia? And it turns out that's a fear a lot of women have. Research shows that nearly 2/3 of women report cognitive changes during the menopause transition. Brain fog, trouble concentrating, word finding difficulties, and forgetfulness are among the most common complaints. Researchers believe fluctuating estrogen affects brain regions involved in memory, attention, and executive function. The reassuring news is that for most women, these changes are temporary rather than signs of permanent cognitive decline. Knowing that doesn't magically make it easier, but it does make it less frightening. That anxiety that comes out of nowhere. Ooh, here's another symptom that doesn't get talked about enough. Anxiety. Not because of something terrible happening, just anxiety. Your heart races, your mind starts spinning. You wake up at 3 a.m. replaying conversations from 5 freaking years ago. You suddenly become convinced you've forgotten something important. For some women, it's their first experience with anxiety. For others, anxiety they've managed for years suddenly spirals out of control. Researchers estimate that women are significantly more likely to experience anxiety symptoms during the menopause transition than before it. Hormonal fluctuations, poor sleep, increased life stress, and changes in brain chemistry all play a role. And let's be honest, midlife doesn't exactly arrive quietly. Many of us are caring for those aging parents, helping adult children, navigating divorces, supporting spouses, changing careers, looking for work, managing finances, trying to stay healthy, maybe grieving people we've lost, maybe grieving versions of ourselves. Hormones aren't the only thing happening. Life is lifing too. Now, this one hit me a lot harder than I expected. Confidence. Not because I suddenly forgot how to do my job or ride my motorcycle or live my life, but because everything started requiring a little more effort. I second guess myself more. I questioned decisions I never would have questioned before. I wondered if people noticed, if they thought I'd changed, if they saw me as capable. Confidence doesn't usually disappear overnight. It fades away. One forgotten word, one sleepless night, one interview that didn't lead anywhere, one comment about getting older, and before you know it, you're questioning yourself more than anyone else ever has. I think that's one of the cruelest parts of this transition. We start believing narratives that simply aren't true. Can I ask you something? How many of you have hit your 50s and then realized you're carrying everyone? Parents, kids, grandkids, friends, coworkers, partners, pets, the house, the bills, the calendar, the groceries, the emotional labor, picking up the birthday gifts, the invisible work. And somehow you're supposed to smile through all of it. Researchers sometimes refer to women in this stage of life as the sandwich generation because they're often caring for both older and younger family members at the same time. And that is fucking exhausting. Even before menopause enters the picture. And there's another emotion I don't hear talked about very often at all, and that is grief. Not necessarily because anybody died, but because life changed. Maybe you're dealing with an empty nest. Your children have moved out. Maybe your marriage ended. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe your parents need more care than they used to. Maybe your body doesn't feel familiar anymore. Grief isn't always about death. Sometimes it's about transition, and sometimes it's about letting go of who we used to be so we can become who we're meant to be next. That kind of grief deserves acknowledgement, not judgment. Now let's bring this back to riding because our mental state matters every time we throw a leg over the bike. Have you ever noticed yourself overthinking a curve you've ridden 100 times? Feeling weirdly nervous in traffic? Getting mentally tired a lot earlier on long rides? Being more distracted than you used to be? That's not a sign that you've become a bad rider. It might be a sign that your brain is working harder than it used to. Sleep deprivation alone can reduce reaction time, attention, and decision making. When poor sleep is combined with anxiety or brain fog, it's not a surprise that riding can feel more mentally demanding. The answer is not to stop riding. The answer is to be intentional. Choose routes that build your confidence. Take breaks before you need them. Hydrate, rest. Know when today's the day for a scenic ride instead of a 500-mile endurance run. There is strength in listening to your body. Motorcycle became my therapy. For me, this is where riding comes in. Sometimes it's simply about breathing. There's something about the rhythm of riding that quiets my mind. The constant chatter disappears. The to-do list fades away. The worries about tomorrow lose their grip. It's just me, the bike, the road, and the next corner. Exercise and activities that require focused attention have been shown to reduce stress and improve mood. While riding a motorcycle hasn't been studied specifically as a treatment for menopause symptoms, many riders describe experiencing a state of focused awareness that helps interrupt anxious thoughts and provides a sense of freedom and emotional reset. For me, that's medicine. You are not broken. If there is one thing I hope you take away from today's episode, it's this. You are not broken. You're adapting. You're evolving. You're living through one of the biggest biological transitions of your life while still showing up for work, for family, for friends, for yourself. That's something to be freaking proud of, not ashamed of. I have a challenge for you this week. This week, I want you to pay attention to your self-talk. If you forget something, instead of saying, I'm losing it, try saying, my brain is working through a hormonal transition. When you're tired, instead of saying, I'm lazy, try saying, maybe my body needs recovery time. And we're having one of those days where everything feels heavy. Go for a ride. Even if it's just 20 minutes. Not to run away from your life, but to reconnect with yourself. If today's conversation resonated with you, I hope you'll share it with another woman rider, because I guarantee there's someone in your riding group wondering why everything suddenly feels different. And she probably thinks she's the only one. She's not. Neither are you. Now, we're going to continue on this topic in the next episode. Next time, we're taking this conversation out onto the road. We're going to talk about the physical realities of riding through menopause, from hot flashes inside a full face helmet to joint pain, grip strength, fatigue, hydration, gear choices, longer recovery times, and the small adjustments that can make a huge difference. Because here's the truth. Menopause may change how we ride, but it doesn't have to change whether we ride. I'm Shell. This has been Hot Flashes and Horsepower. Until next time, drink your water, give yourself a little grace, and if you can, throw that leg over that bike, because sometimes the best therapy doesn't happen in an office. It happens somewhere between the horizon and the next curve in the road. Give yourself grace. Trust your experience, and remember, the road does not give a shit how old you are. It only asks that you keep moving forward. Ride safe, friends.